coming to you live from ancient Egypt. Today we have a special newscast featuring archaeologist Rose Hayes, geographer Molly Channels, and art historian Emily DeJoy, and economist Alexis Beeler. Let's talk to Molly, who's at the Nile River right now.
Thanks, Allie. Around me is the Nile River in Egypt, which is also in northeastern Africa. Rainfall is almost non-existent in this area, so when the river floods, it provides all the necessary water for crops. In July, rain and melting snow from the mountains causes the Nile to flood. When it recedes in October, it leaves fertile soil behind for crops. Before the soil would dry out, people would plant the crops. To water their crops through the winter and spring, they used an irrigation system. There have been times when the Nile didn't flood as much and thousands would starve. When the river flooded too much, the water would destroy houses and seeds necessary for farming. When ships travel north on the river, they just float because the river flows north. The winds blow in a southward direction, so ships moving south depend on their sails.
Thanks, Molly. Now to Rose, who's here to talk about the fascinating qualities of death.
Do you need help getting into your afterlife? Well, then you should go to your local temple and hire one of our patented guides. They'll help get you to the other side safely. Sponsored by the Pharaoh. Available only to the elderly in certain locations. Thanks, Sally, for that charming introduction. Now see, everyone in ancient Egypt did have a social class, just like today, actually. One of the ways you can mostly tell is what would be buried in their tomb. For instance, here we find many items of currency, precious gems, golden coins. These all indicate that this mummy was rather wealthy. Some other things you might find in tombs would be items of parchment that tell us a lot of stuff that we know today. Items in tombs would be items that they would need in the afterlife, such as coins, makeup, food, and if they were pharaohs, they might even have the mummified bodies of their servants to serve them in the afterlife. Everyday items such as plates were useful to them in the afterlife. Now, if this mummy right here were a pharaoh, he would have the biggest tomb in the land to signify that he was better than everyone else. The social structure of the Egyptians was very much like a pyramid itself, with the royals on top, landowners down one more, merchants towards the bottom, and slaves and peasants at the very last. Now, depending on your social service, the mummy would either be social status. The mummy would either be very well preserved or just left out in the desert to dry for a few days. But either way, everyone would be mummified. Now, in the afterlife, they believed that you would hold the same position as you did in the real life. So, if this mummy was a peasant farmer, then this mummy will be a peasant farmer in the afterlife. These mummies actually lived a lot similar to many contemporary societies today, as well as differently. Did you know that ancient Egyptians used makeup? Now, before they could go into the afterlife, though, mummies had to be perfectly recognizable, so they would be allowed to pass into the afterlife. Which is why the ancient Egyptians became so good at mummification, because otherwise they weren't allowed to go and meet their gods and be in their paradise. Back to you, Allie.
Good job, Rose. Now to Emily, who's going to talk about the Egyptian art. Here's our art and architecture historian, Emily DeJoy. She's here to talk about how art and architecture influenced civilizations in ancient Egypt. Now tell me, what materials were used to create the art?
Well, the Egyptians used paints made from iron, copper, limestone, and charcoal. Also, by using minerals that were found in the Nile River Valley, pigments were created. Limestone, sandstone, and calcite were easy to carve into and were used to create reliefs for temples and statues. Artisans also used stone and wood to carve statues. Trade along the Nile allowed the Egyptians to get materials from other places, such as fir, cedar, and tin. The wood was used for carving in sarcophagi. Tin was used to create jewelry. Another material used for jewelry was faience. Faience is a clay-like substance that was made out of quartz or sand. It was also used for sculptures and pottery. Glass was also used, but it was a luxury item.
What was the purpose of the art?
The purpose of the art had a useful function, a religious, or decorative function.
Can you tell me more about the types of art?
Yes. A religious function was that the temple's walls were covered in paintings showing the gods, what happened in the afterlife, and what the gods' roles were in the afterlife. This religious type of art was not meant to be seen or found. Also, the Egyptians used pottery for daily use, such as for storage and dishware. Jewelry, perfume bottles, and sculptures were decorative. The sculptures were used to honor those who had died.
What does the art tell us about their life?
The art tells us that the merchants used art to keep records of trade and to keep a record of their history. It also represented their life and nature, such as most art had scenes of hunting, fishing, and boats. It showed their socio-economic status, since, for example, the pharaohs were most important as they were drawn bigger. They were represented as a god or a king. It showed their belief systems, since they believed in the gods or in the afterlife. It showed their importance of honoring those that had died by having statues of their loved ones. Even the lower class had statues, even if they were smaller on a smaller scale.
What are two artistic art discoveries in the Nile River Valley?
Hieroglyphics could be found written along the temple walls, and hieroglyphics mean holy inscriptions in Greek. The hieroglyphics are pictures that represent sound or words. There were a variety of statues that show the class order, from formal, such as the pharaohs, and informal, to farmers.
What types of architecture were found, and what two features typical of the art are typical of the architecture?
There were a lot of pyramids that were built as tombs for the pharaohs. These tombs were meant to last forever, and even though many didn't last, some are still standing, such as pyramids at Giza, Great Pyramid at Giza. There were temple ruins and the Great Sphinx. In these tombs, there are artifacts that were brought to be buried with the person to be used in the afterlife, such as gold and jewels. A lot of the buildings had flat roofs with external walls and columns that were covered in hieroglyphics. Many houses were made out of mud brick, since it was little wood, and the mud brick was made from mud from the Nile River. Stone was reserved for the temples and pyramids. A most popular structure in the New Kingdom were the temples, and the palaces were decorated with paintings and sculptures.
What do the art and architecture tell us about these societies' values?
It tells us that the society values belief in life after death, and the gods and goddesses were honored. Their construction intertwined with their religious beliefs, and how their social order prevented chaos.
What was the technological ability of the people that settled into the Nile River Valley?
The Egyptians had an advanced technological ability, even though they had little or no technology. They were very accurate in building the pyramids, as they were mathematically advanced. They had to use natural resources and had the ability to use what they had efficiently. They had simple machines such as pulleys and levers and simple tools. Even today in modern civilization, their construction ability has not been matched on a technical or mathematical scale.
Thanks, Emily.
Win an all-expense one-way trip to Egypt to visit the pyramids of Giza. Find the hidden code on the top of your box of mummios and visit www.mummiesdon'tbitemuch.com to enter the code.
Don't worry, we don't bite much.
And now we're here with our economist, Alexis Beeler. Alexis, Is there evidence of economic interdependence within the society or among its neighbors?
Yes, Allie, there is a little bit of interdependence among the Egyptians. They were farmers, but mostly traders. The Nile River Valley had a strong agricultural economy for the past 5,000 years. When the Nile River flooded, it left rich, fertile soil for farming. But among farming, the Egyptians traded, or barter traded, which was trading without money, as shown here. The Egyptians were first known to inhabit the Nile River Valley around 5,200 BC. Egypt was also a supply state, and there isn't much relationship between Egyptians' economy and their social stratification. Good day.
What? Oh, right. And now to our political scientist, who is myself. Hi, I'm Allie, the political scientist, as mentioned before. I'm going to talk about the New Kingdom's government. The New Kingdom's central government was a monarchy ruled by a single pharaoh who had complete control over the kingdom. The word pharaoh means great house of the king. It was believed that the pharaoh maintained the Ma'at, or divine order of the world, and that without him the world would descend to chaos. The pharaoh does make the final decisions, but throughout the day is constantly surrounded by people. Besides his usual servants, generals are talking military matters, ambassadors offering tributes from foreign countries, the high priest is helping receive answers to the pharaoh's prayers from Amun-Ra, and then the usual nobility and some special envoys from across the empire. So the pharaoh has plenty help, but is always in full control, even of the military. The famous King Tut was only a young teen when his father died and needed lots of help to rule the kingdom. The society of the New Kingdom was structured as a bureaucracy. There were strict social classes based on your job. That's it. And that concludes our newscast.
Global Egyptian news is out!
And now we're here with our society and or among its neighbors. I don't know. And then the usual nobility and some special envoys from across the empire.
I know that.
So the pharaoh has plenty. What?
I know that guy.
Okay.
I've heard of his name.
Amun-Ra?
Yeah.
Ra?
He's the sun god, Ra.
Yeah.
This is good bloopers.
Oh my God! What was that? Hi, I'm Alison Brewster, the political.
Global Egyptian news is